Okay, so let's talk about response time and queuing with our AI assistant. I'm going to show you a few levers that you can pull and where these times come from so that you can fine tune and adjust your AI response time, whether you want it to be longer or whether you want it to be shorter. I'm going to show you the levers you can pull. Let's go ahead and go over to the screen over here. So I have my GoHighLevel pulled up, all right, and I have my workspace over here. So I'm going to go into my portal here, which is usually right here, but I want to keep both of these open. Okay, so what I would like to do here is we're going to create a new assistant together. And I'm just going to create a blank one. This blank one will be down here. I'm going to go ahead and favorite this. So this is at the top. And let's call this response time. All right. Let's go ahead and add an active tag before we do anything else. I'm going to create an active tag. All right. And let's link it to our response time here. Say response time activate. Let's add that into GoHighLevel and let's save those changes. So now we have our response time active there. All right, and I think for this one I'm going to be using SMS just to test out. So I'll add the active tag that we just created here. All right. So now if I text in from this number, we should get our new assistant on here. Let me just pull this up real quick. So now if I text in to my AI, we see it comes through here. And we start to see our response time AI is now on this contact and it's now responding. Now, this one's going to take a little longer, right? So we had a little bit of delay there in the beginning, and then right now we're generating. And it's generating probably to the tune of 15 to 17 seconds. And if we ever have response time, right there, right on cue, if we ever have our response times higher like this, especially with a new assistant, I'm going to show you where these times come from and how you can manipulate them so that you can get shorter response time and what actually affects response time. All right, so let's go into this assistant again, this response time here. And all else equal, this is a blank AI. But if you go into the autopilot settings here, you notice that we have a wait time here of 15 seconds, right? What happens if we take that to 0? What kind of response times are we seeing there? So if I text back in, not much, you, and I send that over to the AI, let's see what our response time is then. This one should be around 2 to 3 seconds. Now the queuing time is really for more human response time. If I were doing something like a widget, or if I wanted mine to be very, very quick, I would use 0 queuing time. But if you have a scenario where you want your AI to seem a little bit more real, that's when you would set a higher queuing time. And it's really just the delay from the time the message is known that it's going to be an AI message to the time that we generate it. There's a little delay there. And so it's not the actual generation that's taking that long. It's basically saying, I'm going to wait 15 seconds, like I've been asked to do in my queuing time, before I do anything else. After the 15 seconds is up, that's when the generation starts, and that's when you see the typical end-to-end generation is around 1 to 2 seconds, depending on prompt size, right? And so now we've seen just by one adjustment, we've brought down our response time there very, 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 2 seconds, right? Now, what else affects response time? There's a couple other things that actually will it affects response time a lot. That can be the size of your prompt, the number of the tool calls in the AI, and how long the conversation is, right? And so all else fails, right? All else equal here. How long it takes OpenAI to go through your entire prompt, your entire instruction set, right? Your entire tool call set, your entire conversation set. It needs to, if there's a lot there, it's got a lot that it needs to process before it can, generate an output. And so if you have a very, very, very large prompt where, you can print it on a Google Doc to kind of see the scope of it, but if it's very, very long like that, that actually can increase response time. It's OpenAI saying I have to go through all of this here and then generate a response. A good place to look at this is in the logs. The best place to look at anything is in the logs. So if we look here under this finish run, we can kind of see an overview, relevant or not, of what we're working with here. And so here's our conversation data, right? Here's our historical conversation that we're working with. We don't have any tool calls, so there's no tool calls here. And then we can see a raw response along with our prompt. This right here, and this right here all affect output and how fast that output comes out. If all of those things are super, super long, we're trying to fit a ton of this stuff in there, it's going to take OpenAI a long time to process that information. And so there are a few ways that we can scale and bring down our response time while still having a lot of information. And I'm going to show you that real quick. Okay. Let's go back to our assistant over here. And I'll just create a quick prompt, or I'll pull one from another one. Okay, so I just generated one here. So I basically just said, give me a sales rep for my business. It gave me one here. I'm going to go ahead and save this here. Now, I don't really need to change much in here. All of this looks really good, besides the name here. I spelled it wrong. So I'll save that in there. All right, so this is a really well done prompt. This will do exactly what I need it to, right? This has an identity, this has style guide rails, and overall the response time frame should still be in that 2 to 3 second range, all else being said. I'll just text the AI and say sure. So that way we can kind of get a visual on this too. Now we do have a synthetic delay, just to make sure that we catch active tags, so that since we use no workflows, some people initiate it with workflows on a customer reply. Sometimes we process faster than GoHighLevel can run a workflow. And so we have a synthetic 5-second delay between the time we save a message and the time we go ahead and try to look for tags and process it, just to make sure that we don't miss anything. We could get rid of that 5 seconds and it could be even faster. But because of the no workflow structure, we want to make sure that we catch any active tags that are being added. And you see a prompt of that size is still generating us a 2-second response time, right? So we're still looking pretty good. And this is going to do pretty much everything I need it to. And I can go ahead and add some tool calls. I want this to update information. I want it to check availability book and do the full calendar management suite. I want it to kind of do everything that I have in here for it, as well as, adding some tags, maybe even extracting some information. So I'll go ahead and add all of those to this assistant. So now my assistant has this personality and a task-based framework, really robust prompt set here, and then the ability to do a lot of things here. With no contextual, I don't need extra prompt here to do those things. Now I could reference them in the prompt, but remember, longer prompt is just going to create more response time and sometimes even confuse AI models the longer your prompt is. And what I'll also do is I'll connect my knowledge base that I use the most here. For this one is this. For any contextual information about my business, about my pricing models, about whatever it is that my AI needs to respond to messages. Now what I like to do in those sense, again, keeping the prompt small, keeping it on task, keeping the information correct and keeping the tool calls really nice, is I like to go ahead and set my temperature completely to 0, super deterministic. So that way I can have this super short prompt, super easy, clean, easy to edit if needed, easy to test. Ton of ability here with context behind it. And I'll go ahead and add a calendar here while we're here. Ton of context behind it, and we're getting really good responses to kind of follow the framework there, right? While also getting easy response time. Say, what do you do? Question mark. And so we'll send that text. We see it comes in here, about 5 seconds for us to wait and process it just to make sure we get all of your active tags. And then our generation begins. And you can kind of watch that happen here in the logs. Very fun. You can kind of see the whole process happening. So here's when the message was added. You can see the time difference here, 32 to 36, so about 5 seconds, right? For processing. And what this is just going to do is look at the tags, look at the contact. And then once it finishes its run, you can kind of see the timestamps here between everything, all the way down to send. So now that we have a lot of tools on our stuff, right? We have RAG included. RAG is going to add a little bit of time. So RAG is your knowledge base because it has to go embed everything and then bring it back in for context. All of those different things bring up response time, but they make the responses really coherent. We can even see our match scores and some of the stuff that's stored in our knowledge base just to make sure that we're getting proper context and everything. We see that it's starting to assume its persona a little bit more with really no context into this random conversation, me just saying hey over and over and over again, right? And then a lot of tool calls. We can see that here in this finish run. I mean, look at the difference between that one and then this one here, right? So super short, 2-second response time all the way up to this one, where there's a lot more data, there's a lot of things that are happening here, right? There's a lot of things that are going on, which brings our response time up a little bit. And so if you want to bring this down even further, but you still want context, right? There's always going to be a trade-off for the two. Bringing down some unnecessary tools that you may have added just that you aren't using, scaling down the prompt, using a knowledge base that's more specific to the use case, either sales, support, whatever, so that the embedding process happens a lot quicker. These are ways that you can kind of scale the wait time on your prompt to make sure that things are happening quick and things are happening as they should, right? Super robust, but also quick, making sure that we don't have to make that trade-off. There's some gray area there. Now you can increase your wait time here. So an example, just how we had earlier, I can bring up a 12-second delay. I won't mind to seem a little bit more human when someone texts in. I don't want that super, bot response where it, messages back immediately and then throws up a red flag that, hey, I'm an AI. I can add a little bit of delay in there. And we can see this happening kind of live here. So we have about the 5 seconds, right? Looking for tags, waiting for GoHighLevel workflows to happen. And then once that happens, once we've detected the active tag, we have about 12 seconds here. And so this is not actually generation, this is waiting. So the message has been created, now we're just waiting the 12 seconds. Once the 12 seconds is up, the generation goes through as normal, and then the response is sent to GoHighLevel. There we go. There's the difference between response time and what levers to pull on some of those things, because it may affect some response time in there. So if you're looking for something just fast and conversational, you may go with less tools, you may go with less prompt. But if you're looking for something super robust, right, where you want all of your appointment booking and everything automated in a real meaningful way, about 6 to 13 is standard with no queuing and everything too. No additional queuing time added on top. So these are the levers to pull for response time, and what you should be seeing end to end. With all else equal, it should be 2 to 3 seconds end to end. With a full robust tool set, knowledge base, and everything else, you'll see about 6 to 9 seconds end to end with all available abilities and context enabled while still being very deterministic. So these are the things that manages response time. And I hope that's helpful to kind of get you started on where to look to kind of optimize, because it's, some people want more context, less response time. Some people want to worry about response time and rather than context. So those are the levers that you can pull so that you can optimize for either one of those